Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you are new here and you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, head over to officehours.global. We answer your questions on media and digital productions in our first hour. And in our second hour, we tend to spend something time on a subject or having a guest. Today, we'll be speaking about creating the perfect persona for your marketing. So go ahead and get those questions in early. And if you are watching us on the replay, you can ask your questions at any time at askofficehours.global or using the QR code that you should see on your screen. And speaking of questions, Mitchell, let's get into this.
Thank you, Liberty. Our first in is Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida, asking, is there a way to help office hours offline? I'm on the East Coast and already into my workday during the live office hours. Thanks.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. Reach out to Josh Kaufman on Discord. He's the best person to talk to about that for many of the volunteer opportunities there. And you will see more and more calls to action. I lost power yesterday, so I didn't put out the post, but we'll put out a post for a call to action to work on NAB. We already put one out for that. We're also going to put one out for the councils, and that still is maybe during your workday. But there are a lot of other organizational things that you can do that we're building up because there's a lot of things to do. Go ahead.
Chris?
I will also like to point out officehours.global/donate. You can absolutely help there. I agree. You should too.
And if you don't do it, we're now if you don't do either one of those, if you don't have time or money, go to our stuff, especially our shorts on YouTube and watch a couple of them and vote on them. Give them a little thumbs up. We're experimenting with that, so that's the other way that you can help us without time or money.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith from Chautauqua, New York. What would be the best way, or maybe best 2 or 3 ways, to have in-room screens that have a full screen of words, but then have the live stream have a live camera, and the L3 be the same words that are shown full screen?
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on what you already own or how you want to do this. You could do it with the aux buses in hardware or with some software switchers like Wirecast, vMix, MIMO. You can say output and then change that output to an input. And that input could be a designed look with that lower third. And you can just hit that and send it directly to that other screen or that live stream. So you can not just have program, you have clean feeds or different looks. So that'd be the way, one of the ways to do it. I'm sure there's multiple ways to do that.
Alex?
Yeah, it depends on how fixed the data is as well. So is this something that you're putting up and it's changing all the time? And is it dynamic or is it something that are just slides? One thing that you can do is you can definitely find ways to fire off multiple, like for instance, PowerPoint or keynotes that have different formats that you can key in and key over if needed to. You could also do something like SPX. So SPX is what we use for the lower thirds here. You could have 2 different looks that are looking at the same data path. So those are a couple, and a lot of different graphics engines will let you look at things in different ways and output them in different ways. And so you can, look at doing multiple outputs of the same thing. Also, you could also format web pages that you're simply updating something on the web page and having it come out in multiple formats that can either be keyed over or built into a graphic. So those are a couple different ways that you potentially could do that.
And Guy?
Yeah, I forgot to mention if you're getting pretty advanced with this, Malumen and on the Mac and Resolume are 2 of the other ones, as well as ProPresenter. A lot of churches do this. So take a look at those 3 softwares. They all have trials that you can go ahead and download. Like Malumen's got a 30-day, and you can do pretty complex mapping of those projectors. So you can skew them and you could edge blend them. There's so much stuff that you can do. You just need a powerful machine.
Yeah, Ventus would be another one that you might want to look at too.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is in with a question. I swapped my AmpliFi Alien router for a UniFi Express, and I've been impressed by the performance and reliability. What other components of the UniFi ecosystem could be useful in a home office setting?
Guy?
Yeah, the question over the weekend came up, and so I was experimenting with this about iCloud actually maxing out somebody's connection, and so it was causing them to drop out. And Mickey in the chat had mentioned that, like all routers, they'll do that. Well, some of these UniFi devices will allow you to do specific traffic. So you could say just iCloud, limit that to half my bandwidth. So it never takes over, because I was at a local studio and they had a pinning farm. And they said every time somebody hits speed test on the network, it drops that pinning machine and slows the Teams machine or the Zoom machine, and you get glitches. I'm like, well, go use QoS on your router and limit it. But they didn't know the procedure to do that. So some of these UniFi devices and some of these other Cisco and whatnot, that's the importance of knowing what your routers are capable of, is traffic shaping. The other thing that's cool is you could do secondary WAN. So here I'm using it as a direct failover. So when mine crashes or my internet goes out, it just automatically within a few seconds transfers over. And the other thing that you can do is I moved everybody else over to that secondary WAN. So I'm able to route all my traffic so that I get the full bandwidth of the primary connection, which is fiber, and then I give everybody else the slower backup machine. So those are a couple things that you can do with these UniFi devices.
Alex?
Do they still use pinning farms? Is that still a thing?
It is. And I was trying to make a case for the clarity, because they have a Zoom ISO box as well. And I'd have to say that the visual clarity on a 55-inch OLED, it still looked darn good. I was thinking it was going to be muddied up and not good. But yeah, they have 12 machines, and their thing is they like to mix and match. So they're doing Teams folks, WebEx folks into a Zoom meeting. So their big thing is that they can push anything into anything. Yeah,
we used to do that. I used to do that, and I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's so rustic. Anyway, I'm just curious.
Next question.
Alexander Knight from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, right here on our panel. I had an actor this weekend come in for an interview. Since he has directing experience, he couldn't help but immediately ask me to reconfigure my lighting. How do you best deal with people that ask for last-minute changes?
Go ahead, Alexander. Let's get the backstory.
Yeah, I just want a little context. So when he showed up, he was already a little flustered because he had some problems trying to find the correct entrance for the building. And then when he got in, he was wearing a baseball cap. And of course, baseball cap, it's really hard to get lights into people's eyes, because I have overhead lights on the ceiling. And he was already annoyed because I've got a confidence monitor. He's looking at himself, takes his hat off, his hair's all messy. He's saying, I look terrible, I'm all sweaty. So he puts the baseball hat on. He's like, all right, turn off this light, and like, can you get a light directly in my face? I'm like, okay, I got to grab another light, plug it in, and get it. So it was just like, it was really, really, really annoying. I didn't want to do it, but I wanted him to feel comfortable. And once he settled in, he was fine, and we had a great conversation. But I just wanted to get some advice from everybody who's had a lot more experience. I've never had an actor actually here physically, so it was the first time I'm kind of working with an actor, so it was not what I was expecting.
Courtney?
Well, they can be very demanding. I've worked with a number of actors, super big celebrities over the years, and what happens is everyone just accommodates them. If a big-name actress, who shall remain nameless, but her initials are BS, comes into the thing and says, "Oh, you never like me. You never key me from this side. I have to be keyed from this side." You stop the production. Everybody moves the key to the other side, or you got to be prepared to key from either side. So you have up key and fill set the same on both sides, so that you can change them at a moment's notice. Yes, on the board. So. They have to be accommodating. We've had actors that you wouldn't think would be that vain, male actors who come in if they come in with the hand mirror, watch out, because the lighting's going to change. I've had a number of them like that, and how they deal with them. Some of them, and she's dead now, I will tell one little story. Elizabeth Taylor, they fought this fight for about an hour and a half before she got there, of which side, and then her lighting guy showed up and said, "Oh, you can't light Miss Taylor that way. It has to be the other way." We moved all the lights around and had a stand-in. Then Taylor gets on the set, and there's arguments going on. "Oh, we can't do that. We see bags." There's whispering going on. So finally, she started sitting there. She goes, "Bring me a mirror." And she looks in the mirror and she goes, "Put the light over there, we'll go with the bags." Very matter-of-factly. End of discussion.
Alex?
Yeah, generally my response is, let's see what we can do. Like as Courtney said, like if someone comes in and starts asking me to move lights, I just figure out like, well, let's figure it out. The reason is that I'm trying to extract a great experience. I'm trying to extract a great performance from them, and having them not happy about how they look will affect their performance. And and this gets into the difference between, you have a very professional setup. So this is for the listeners, but the difference between a professional setup and a kind of a startup setup or a beginner setup is that the professional setup has lots of tools that are really easy to move things around. So you're paying extra for the extra things that are really easy to that's why we build grids. That's why we have rigs. So when you build things into the walls and into those things, it's harder to move things. One of the reasons that we have many of the things that we have, and we have them set up to be flexible, is so that we can move them quickly, and that we can readjust them. And so when an actor walks in and says, and sometimes you can't. There is a shot on the internet where a VIP is complaining to me about their lighting, and it's still on YouTube. I'm not going to mention where it is. You have to go try to dig it up, and you only see me in a moment. So you probably, but they're complaining that they don't have the Oprah lighting that they wanted, and there was nothing we could do because there was no way to put it there. So there's kind of like a pushback because we just couldn't. There's no way to accommodate it in the space that we had and the time. That's the other thing you have to look at is the thing you have to be careful about when you make changes is that you have to. Are you risking the event? So if they show up an hour before the event, there's a lot of things you can do, or 2 hours before the event, there's a lot of things you can do. If they show up 15 minutes before the event goes live, there's not a lot you can do. And you want to be careful of not making changes even for yourself. Like there's a lot of. You'll hear me over the comms. It's probably not a nice thing to say, but someone will say, like, hey, we're going to move this one thing, this camera. And I'm like, no, leave the knife, leave the knife in. Just like, I get that that's not what you want, but you cannot move it right now. Like we're right before we're within a certain, and I'll pull my elbows in pretty early. Like I'll make decisions about, we don't have time to make these fixes and we're going to live with what we have because, you can destabilize your event. Especially if you've had a lot of trouble that day, be very careful of making changes.
Yeah, and just pulling in, Mickey says in the comments, if it's talent or an interview subject, he says no. And just based off of what you said as well in the feedback already given, it was not you. It's you, not me. It was the talent. And you already said that he came in, a little nervous and anxious. So we try to talk them through if there's enough time, talking them through and just really helping them to get comfortable because you recognize that it's nerves and they go to whatever their safety or their 911 space is. And for him, in this, what it sounds like, or this person is like just getting control of the situation. And it's also their brand as well. So they're concerned just giving you some language and anyone else who's watching so that, squashing any ego or you did everything correctly, but now it's a matter of, okay, let's make sure that they're okay. And as Alex said, to get the best out of them, because at the end of it, you're going to look at the product and was the product what you wanted, what they wanted, and that's what matters at the end of the day. Next question.
From Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas, I scrapped my Netgear routers and switches for a Unifi Dream Machine Pro. Thanks, Office Hours. Now, what's the most economical yet effective hard drive to install for video recording? And how do I connect with a Synology DS224 Plus? Ironwolf?
Jason?
Okay, hard drives are really easy. You need to just look at hard drives and divide by the storage, and you're going to see that there's a curve where it'll basically just fall off and start getting more expensive per gigabyte because you only have one hard drive space in that router. My guess is around 12 terabytes, but that is an astronomical amount of storage. So I don't think you're really going to run into that. As far as connecting the Synology I don't think that's a 10 gigabit, so you just plug it directly in.
Guy?
Yeah, I don't use that storage on there. I don't think their camera system's that great compared to other items on the market like Wise. Wise is just super clear. It's got AI where it'll tell you the zoning and packages delivered a person versus a dog. And there's cloud. So if your whole device walks away, you still have the recording of who did it up in the cloud rather than, they took my storage device. The other thing is with the you do get power over Ethernet. So it depends on what you're trying to secure, what you're trying to view. If you need like 30 days out, sometimes it is nice to have those 12 terabytes, as Jason was saying. And it just depends on if you're trying to do enterprise grade stuff where you need, for legal reasons, certain areas always 24/7 recording. But I found that you can go back in the Wise cloud recordings 30 days if you pay for it. So that's the other thing, is some of these services you'll have to pay the monthly for it. And as far as hooking it up to the Synology up to it, there's 2 LAN ports on that. Like Jason was saying, it's not 10 gig. It's just regular 1 gig. Depending on how many users, you may saturate that pretty quick, or you may not even need those speeds. But Synology makes bigger units that have a 10 gig card, and then you get a 10 gig network, and now you can have way faster. If you're trying to do video with the Synology, then I would recommend getting a different device that can, like QNAP or just the Synology that has the 10 gig upgrade card.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, all good tips there. And I will endorse the Seagate Ironwolf. It's their top-of-the-line spinny drive. It's a good one to use. It's pretty hard and excellent reliability.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida asks, Sony will release shutter angle functions for the FX3, FX30. Since these cameras do not have rotating shutters, how does this actually work?
Well,
go ahead, Courtney.
It's just math. Shutter angle, it translates to shutter speed, because shutter angle is usually twice what the shutter, the frame rate is, let's say. The shutter speed can be a little bit different. You know, we did how digital cameras handle this is they have a rolling shutter or sometimes a global shutter. I'm not sure if the FX3s has a global, but probably a rolling shutter, where they sample the CCD elements a row at a time, and then they pull the data off those CCD elements. In other words, they dump them first, and then they start pulling the data off in another row that comes down. And the difference between those 2 rows is your shutter angle or shutter speed. I tell you, we did a second hour on Captain Disillusion last week sometime. Go and look at his explanation. He has some of the best graphics that explain all this for shutter speed. He did a recent video on shutter speed that explains this with great graphics. I urge you to go see that. It will explain it in full, the difference between shutter angle and shutter speed, and how it's handled in digital cameras that don't have actual shutters that rotate.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith from Chautauqua, New York. I'm looking to learn more about MIDI devices and control. What are some good resources to learn from, besides office hours, of course?
Guy?
YouTube, man, I was geeking out over the weekend on Streaming Alchemy. So Streaming Alchemy is one resource where, so I'm trying to do MIDI control of the faders in vMix. And so specifically I was looking for that, and I just went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure it out. And there's some great videos out there. It just depends on what you want to do. But I think that you're trying to do the same thing as well, which is use a MIDI device to control. And it's just a matter of watching some of these videos that people like. The other one that I was watching is Joe DeMax, who has Central Control. He has some great videos that'll show you how to, what I'm doing is I'm accessing units in the cloud. So I'm using MIDI devices to control cloud instances. So check out Central Control as well.
YouTube University. Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is one called Audio University on YouTube that has some things on MIDI. And overall, it's a great resource if you're just looking for basics and understanding how audio works. So if you're not doing what Guy's doing, you're actually interested in MIDI for music, that's something to look at there. Also, one of our own members, Nick Batt, has Sonic State. So Sonic State is on YouTube as well. And it's less about how to use MIDI, although he knows a lot about it, but it's more about all the tools that use MIDI. And so you may want to take a look at that as well.
And Alexander?
Yeah, I was just going to mention LinkedIn Learning too. Unless you're looking for a specific piece of hardware that you need to learn too, there may be a generalized MIDI course. And of course, there's also components of MIDI in various digital audio workstations. And you can also find a lot of really well done courses by industry professionals. It's like a university course. They have transcriptions and you can go module by module at your own pace. I really like those.
And Mickey's dropped a resource in the chat, MIDI Manual Practical Production Engineering. You can get that on Amazon. And he recommends start from the basics and learn about how MIDI utilizes serial communication. So a bunch of resources to get you started there. Next question.
Vic Hernandez from Springfield, Missouri. I'm looking for a keyboard that is compatible with PC and the Mac, preferably one that has the ability to switch machines from the keyboard. Ideas?
Go ahead, Jason.
Sure, I've got a few. Let's see. I really like the Logitech Ergo K860. This one will let you switch between 3 different devices. And if you're all Mac, the MX keys for Mac has a really good feel too.
And Alexander?
I just bought a mechanical keyboard by Keytron, which I really like. Now, it is a wired version of, but the cool thing about the keyboard, you can actually pick what type of switches you like. It also has a button at the back, and you can actually switch it between Mac/iOS and Windows and Android. So it has both modes. I believe they have a Bluetooth. I know they have wireless versions as well. And I think there are some Bluetooth versions where they have programmable buttons where you can actually switch between various, I think at least 3 different Bluetooth computers. So you might want to look at Keytron if you like mechanical switches specifically.
This is a great opportunity for you to submit any of the questions that you have for us during this first hour, or get ready for our second hour where we'll be discussing personas and crafting, like really getting an understanding of who your audience is so that you can not only tailor your events, but then also your marketing materials and figuring out some of the tools and resources. So go ahead and make sure you can vote them up or the ones that you would like to see on another day in Mukada. Next question.
Already got a great QR code question coming in from Gabriela Excelsior Mistera from Sault Ste. Marie. No live show on the radio today. Is it coming back this week?
Alex?
Yeah, for those listening, there's a live show. There's a radio app, and if you're in Discord, you can find the link to that. It's in test mode, so it's still in beta, and it's a volunteer show, so we have limited resources. The radio app is still something we're testing, so you may get used to it working all the time, but it may not work every day as we kind of work through those pipelines. And so that's sometimes you won't see it up because we're still looking for resources there. And if you'd like to volunteer and be part of these teams that make all of this happen, you can go to officehours.global/volunteer or join. In the emails that you get every day, you'll see a place where you can volunteer. But resources are limited, and sometimes we have the resources and sometimes we don't. So most of the time the radio's up, but not always.
Next question.
And a question from Paul Wallace from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Superbowl 165 cameras, CBS comment.
Bill.
So this should be an absolutely monster audience. That's my prediction for it. I think people are ready for full-scale NFL back. I think CBS is throwing all the money at this, and they should. The fact that it's numerically 165 cameras, I think this is something where, hey, it'd be good to have a camera over there. Good, and nobody's going to tell them no. And so I think they have the crew, the experience, and everything they need to manage that much. I'm kind of interested in what Nickelodeon does because that's one of their partners, and I want to know if they're going to digitally infuse everyone with slime or something like that. So that'll be fun. But whatever, it's going to, I think, be a fascinating Super Bowl. I'm really looking forward to the coverage of this one.
Alex?
Yeah, it looks like they think that it could be, with the Taylor Swift effect, potentially the most viewed television event ever. So that's kind of the billing right now. 165 cameras, 24 cameras with 4K zoom extraction capability, so you can pull a full 4K image out of the cameras. 6 Doink cameras. They have 6 Doink cameras. These are cameras that were built into the uprights, and they actually cut a hole out of the uprights and put these cameras in so that if it hits the upright, you can see it. There's a Doink. 24 robotic cameras, 20 cameras embedded inside the end zone pylons. 20 just in the end zone pylons. 23 augmented reality cameras. These are cameras that are synced so that when they want to add graphics over top of the field, the graphics will lock to the background. 5 sky cams or fly cams, 3 drones, 5 depth of field cameras. Those are the short ones. They're usually on one end of the field or the other. So if they're doing a timeout or they're celebrating, you'll see suddenly everything will get really short depth of field. Those are 5 of those cameras. 6 sets, Las Vegas Strip and the stadium. 49 replay machines, 600 record playback channels, 19 television mobile units. It's a big show. And I would say that if you're in our industry, even if you don't like football, American football, I'd recommend watching. This is pretty close to the state of the art of what live looks like in the world, as far as all the money, that you can put on it. This and the Olympics are probably the 2 big ones.
That's a good call, because then also ushers the halftime, and then the halftime show as well. So just seeing what they're going to...
Well, the big thing is when Apple sponsors the halftime show, it's another version of all the money. Last year, I heard that it was 9 months of planning, and it was 6 weeks of testing, and then a month of long days without a day off to get it ready to go in the stadium to make sure that the Apple, that's just the halftime show. That was just the halftime show. So it's going to be quite a thing.
Courtney?
Yeah, Alex covered all the high points there, but I'd be interested to see what this XR Ghost augmented reality, how they're going to implement that into the show itself. And I'm not sure exactly what that Ghost XR is. But it'll be interesting. Maybe we should do a second-hour breakdown if the NFL wouldn't kick us off of YouTube.
Oh, they won't kick us off. They'll just flag us. I don't really care since we're not monetizing it. so yeah, we'll show it. So we'll do a breakdown after the stadium. Yeah, absolutely.
Mitchell?
I was talking to James Callahan, who we often see on After Hours, and he's an ambassador to the whole thing. He said that CBS is in the process of building a giant glass studio right across from the Paris Hotel, right there where the Bellagio is, that giant lake with all the fountains on it. So apparently there's going to be quite a spectacle there. And then my only other question is the doink cam, the sound that the football makes when it hits it, or is it actually an acronym for something?
Nope, doink. It's just what it sounds like when it hits the uprights. It's a doink cam. I don't think that those existed before. I think it's the first time we officially. I think this is the first official use of doink, but it is. But it will be in the dictionary soon enough.
Right, questions that you didn't know that you needed to be asked right here on Office Hours. Now, in the comments, Kyle asks, "Are we having an OH party for Super Bowl? Just curious."
I don't know. I think that we're just probably going to review it. I think that the problem is that it's. I think that people will be either not interested or really interested, and I think that the idea of kind of watching it and talking about it might be hard.
Yeah, Chris,
Alex, you said 20 end zone pylon cameras.
Yeah. So it's, and I think that what it is,
all the math and geometry and Pythagorean theorem I can, and I can't figure out where I would put 20 cameras if somebody said I could.
There are multiple cameras on each pylon.
No, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not doubting that. I can't even imagine where I would put 20 angles.
They're pretty excited about the whole thing. So
we'll see on Sunday.
Yeah. I remember when they first started talking about the pylon cameras. This is probably 25 years ago, almost, close to 25 years ago. They're talking about the pylon cameras. They're talking about all these companies that made spy cameras. This is where all these little cameras, your phone, everything. The companies that made the spy cameras were getting released from their classified position. So all these cameras had been out there for quite some time, but they're only for 3-letter agencies. And they were being released so that they could take them, commercialize them. And so they were talking about these little cameras. You can't believe how small these cameras are. And you can just put them into anything. And they said, this is going to revolutionize it. And they were talking about back then. And then we're going to test them. We're going to put them in the pylon cameras. And they had so much trouble with them. What's interesting about the NFL, there's a lot of footage you don't see because they're like those pylon cameras, I think they were there and not used in broadcast for 4 or 5 years. Like they were just not, because they just weren't good enough. Like they would blow out, they would have low quality. And then even when they came out, they weren't great. Now they're pretty good. And I think that some of them I think you may see some of the pylon cameras be super wides and then one right below it that is a long one that goes like right down the goal line so that you can see, you get a better shot of a goal line hit. So those are the kind of things, because the super wide, you can see some of it, but a longer camera. So I think you're going to see you could potentially have 2 or 3 cameras going down one side And I think they might have. Let me see. They might have had a picture of it. Here's a picture of the.
I just hit 20. Okay.
This is the pylon camera right here. So you can see they've got a camera. Here's all these cameras that are all all in the. So the higher ones. Looks like there's another one up here. That's 20 right there. There's 5 of them right there.
Well, that's 5. So 4 times that on the corners.
Yeah.
There's your 20.
There you go.
Courtney?
Yeah, I was just going to say they have them also at the 5-yard line besides the goal line. And I think they use the pylon cameras also, even if they don't put them in the air for referees making decisions about goals.
Oh, yeah.
And Mitchell?
And I guess they're going to have drones there, and the drones can only fly over the periphery of the stadium, and it's covered, so you have that to deal with. And I guess the Skycam with the wired thing that Garrett Brown invented. And who is the port TD that has
I don't think
to
Garrett
switch?
Brown invented the Skycam.
Oh, yes, he
Steadicam.
did.
Steadicam.
No, he did the Skycam too.
Okay.
You asked who's the
port TD that has to deal with all these cameras?
Do we know?
Is this another Hamish Hamilton presentation? I wonder if his team.
Ready, 142, take 142.
That's right. Man, boy. And he just did the Grammys.
I just want to say that
that's a big
Mitch is right. I challenged him. I very quickly went up to check that. I was like, "There's no way that Garrett did both the Steadicam and the Skycam." And it turns out Skycam was invented by Garrett Brown, also the inventor of Steadicam in the early 1980s. Patent for Skycam was assigned to Skycam in 2004. Skycam. Anyway, there you go. So I just want to underline Mitch. Mitch, you can put that,
circle that date.
Yeah.
I only protest once, and that's all. I will not protest twice.
Yeah, but I just want to outline it. I couldn't believe that was the truth, and it was. So there we go.
Even a blind squirrel gets to eat acorns sometimes.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer here to save the day from Viera, Florida, with a question. Any updates from Zoom on the long-requested local camera recording feature requested to obviate a Riverview Squadcast?
Go ahead, Alex.
No updates. so no updates. But we do think that because we will like to repeat that because Zoom announced it in a keynote, we're still expecting it. We're still expecting them to do it, and we're going to keep on bringing it up until they do. And when they do, we're going to have a party, and there's going to be a cake. It's going to be literally a local record cake. I don't know. We will have to send it to everyone so that they can locally eat it. So maybe we'll send all the panelists like little pieces of cake or something, or cupcakes or something, to celebrate the fact that we have local record. But Zoom promised it in a keynote a year and a half ago, and we still haven't seen it. Just saying.
And then have them on to them on as second
we'll have
hour.
them on. There'll be fanfare. There'll be. I think we may even have a parade. It might be a mid-journey parade, but it'll be a parade. Pictures of fanfare about the local recording.
We can send a cake to the corporate headquarters.
It's a really it's a really big business. I know that Chris uses. I think you're using Riverside. Is that right?
Yeah, Riverside is what we are kind of forced to use.
Yeah, and I will say, I was talking to somebody. I was having lunch with someone, and they were like, "Oh, I make so much money on Riverside." like it's just like it's a really useful tool, and the fact that Zoom is leaving that on the table is pretty amazing. So because all of us have these tools, and so anyway, we'll see.
Next question.
Next one in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I was under the impression that a scheduled event on Facebook would go live automatically as long as it receives the stream from the software, but that did not happen for me on the last event. Did I miss a step?
Guy?
Yeah, you missed rehearsal. So test. That's the thing is I have a secondary account that's just called DV Video Tests, and you can see here that I said go live automatically at scheduled start time. If you turn this option, your broadcast will begin at your scheduled start time after you send Facebook your video stream. So it depends on how you're sending it. I mean, if you're sending it with this stream key into if you're sending it from something that has the API, so we use vMix, and you can actually log in as you, and you can hit that event, and it works really well, and you get 1080p out of vMix. So it's one of the few softwares that will actually give you 1080 instead of 720. So I would create a second account and just test the heck out of this before announcing to your bigger account that you're going to go live. So just test, rehearse. You want to fax this out, make sure it works every time, and then go ahead and put it on the big account. But I would be super careful, and I would, if you can, use vMix just because it has the API built in.
Alex?
Yeah, pretty much all of my clients stopped using Facebook a long time ago, so this is a little dated. So it was not really something that I know anybody that I work with that uses it very much anymore. So it's a little dated. But what I will say is that I highly recommend starting things on manually. Automatic starts is a really can put you in a bind. And it really is worth starting a little early and maintaining control of that trigger. I wouldn't recommend, and that's with both YouTube, Facebook, any of these. An automatic start is a great way to start poorly.
And Zach, I'd be interested to know what you were using to get to Facebook, because I do know there are a number of people, coaches, who are using Facebook groups so that they still have the community, they still have all the engagement that they have generally in a group, and then streaming directly. And some of them are using StreamYard and then also Zoom, because you can do that. So I'm just wondering what that chain is, and going back to what Guy said of, being able to test in advance to make sure that it fires, because it should fire automatically. We just did some last week. So hopefully that'll help you work through just some of the troubleshooting. Next question.
And we have a question from Ketil Flav Gilswald from Tromsø. What is your dream app for the Apple Vision Pro that does not exist yet?
Nigel.
Yeah, so I think it was Chris that sent me an Instagram thing the other day of the Formula One idea that you could be watching the race on television, and on the floor in front of you is the track, and you can see where the cars are, and you can walk to the other side of the track and see. So I think that sort of live sports type thing, I think, is going to be the thing that creates a huge wave when they work out how to do it. I think from a productivity thing, I understand the current restriction is one Mac desktop. I think if you could do multiple Mac desktops, I think that would create an opportunity. Long term, I think there are lots of examples of apps that use VR in the construction industry, but they've really not got mass adoption. So for someone like us who does a lot of home automation, be able to really simple way to show them what their home will look like and how it will feel when you do construction or automation stuff, I think it's sort of you can do some of it today, but the mass commercialization of that would make a huge difference.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think Apple, if there was a dream app, Apple would have released it and worked on it and released it themselves at the moment they released this device to give it much more purpose in life. What Nigel said might be an interesting app for it. Definitely, it'll have more consumer appeal than the vertical market apps like Jig that Alex talks about, and I saw the demo of, where you take 3D 3D files and can walk around an object or walk around a building, but they've had that in virtual reality for years, so there's not too much in other than putting that car that you're going to disassemble or a jet engine that you want to take apart in your living room. There's no real need for augmented reality for that. That works just as well in virtual reality. So I'm not sure of the absolute need for that. And a dream app, maybe the dream app would be that it deposits $3,500 back in your bank account.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that you're going to end up with, I think the reason that I point to it is not that Jig is perfect in any way, shape, or form. And there have been, I've been doing VR in some way, shape, or form for 25 years, and I can tell you that the Jig app is something pretty special. Like it is, and it's been around for a while. The fact that you can, it's not that it hasn't existed before. It's the interface is so seamless, and so you're able to sit there and go, oh, I want to pull it like this, and look over at it, and it can run. You go, and it has what's key is that it has a step-by-step thing. So as a developer, you can go, oh, I want all the pieces to be here. Now I want them all to be here. Now I want them running, or I want them. There's a whole bunch of tools that they've already built because this wasn't built long before the headset, and so there's a lot of built-in tools that will let you break that out. It is expensive for a lot of folks, but for companies selling expensive things, this is going to be a big deal. And apps like it are going to explode. So being able to show people how to use your microwave, how to use whatever, how to use those kinds of things, are going to build as these go in. Probably high end right now because it's an expensive headset. But I really feel like there was something about it that, this is what I've been hoping for a long time as far as building training. My dream app though is a Kia. A Kia needs to build an app that shows me how to build all that stupid furniture without ending up with 6 extra screws. And so that, because, and people would go, where do I put this one? And so I think that there's actually a step-by-step inside of the Jig app that does that. Beyond that, I think that there's going to be some, I do think that live events like concerts and so on and so forth, there's a test hidden inside of the music app. Apple just kind of sprinkled stuff in there. They don't tell you where it is. And so you have to kind of know. But there's an Alicia Keys concert inside of the music app that's immersive. That is actually, it's in her studio and she's walking around. Now, I don't agree with 4 cameras. I don't think you need 4 cameras. I think you do it with 1. But she's got 4 stereo cameras and she plays and walks around and everything else. And I think that it's a great little test. I also don't think that Apple would produce. I think that Apple purposefully has kept a lot of powder dry because they want, if you build a really big tree, like something that everybody, like the problem with the Meta headset when it first came out was Robo Recall. Because as soon as you use Robo Recall, everything was like a real letdown on the thing. And so I think that, letting people kind of figure it out themselves, you need enough good examples that people are excited, but not so many that they go too crazy. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but I will say that last night I lost power, but I have a UPS for my router, so I still had internet. And so while waiting, my family went out to get some food, and while waiting, I sat down and put the Vision on and watched a giant screen, like a 150-inch screen of the Superman, Man of Steel, and just sat there and watched the whole thing while I was waiting for everyone to come back without any lights, and and I had clients texting me, so I didn't want to lose their text, so I took my messages and just grabbed onto it and put it above the screen, so that if they text me, I can look up and answer their question and then go back to the movie. And so it's pretty cool. I will say I've spent probably a total of 12 hours in it since Friday, and almost every time I put it on, it's an hour or two. And I never did that with the Quest. I still don't do that with the Quest that long. The Quest kind of wears me down, just in a couple places. And this one does not. I'm like, oh, I got to go do something else and be useful. But it's different. It's definitely different. You can tell that they spent all the monies on it.
Chris?
Nigel said there hasn't been any mass adoption. I would like to remind you, Nigel, the thing's been out for 3 days. There's not a whole lot of mass adoption possible quite yet. Maybe soon.
Go ahead, Nigel. You can respond.
I was about to say, Nigel.
Yeah, I didn't say mass adoption of the Vision. I said mass adoption of headsets. So there's been, what you won't see is the Quest and the other things have not been mass adopted of this type of technology. It wasn't just the Vision.
Bill?
I don't think you can dream where this thing is going. And I'm honest about that. I mean, it's really easy to pick something like, okay, surgical training. This is going to be astonishing for that, right? Everybody can kind of understand that. But that's what we know now projected against a thing that we don't understand very well yet. And I think it's a disservice to say that we compare it to the other headsets before it, because we saw what happened with all the other MP3 players before the iPod came out. It didn't move the market, but that did. And so there's at least a reasonable reason to think that maybe they've managed to crack another nut that's going to yield a lot more than you thought was inside the shell when they cracked it. Nobody knows. And it could go the other way, and it could turn out to be just a flash in the pan. But I got to say, I'm feeling, as I read all these people who are early adopters who are putting their 2 cents worth in, it seems like it's connecting with a lot of them pretty deeply. And so if it continues to do that, it has the potential to be one of those transformative technologies. Only time will tell.
Mitchell?
I had the pleasure of talking to Chris Fritchie on After Hours last night about the significance of rig in the 3D world. And Chris pointed out that he thinks it's cool. It's cool technology, but it's a first step.
Jig or rig?
Jig, sorry.
Yeah, jig.
Jig, the 3D exploding thing. I don't have one. But anyhow, he was saying that, of course, there's some improvements that need to be made, but that's the second, third, or fourth iteration of it. But his first observation was this would be great on an assembly line where you're looking at the device you're making, you can explode the view, and then you can look down to see the parts circled, the actual parts circled in front of you. I think that just sort of brings up to mind that maybe Apple's thinking of that as a possible application.
One of the things that's hidden in Jig that when my brain went from, oh, this is cool to whoa, was when there is an annotation tool that you click on, you can draw with your finger in 3D around an object, and then that drawing just stays there in 3D. It's a 3D tube that you're drawing into it, so you can circle like the wheel or circle something, and it just stays there. And as you walk around, that stays there. And you can, I haven't done this yet with someone else in a headset, but you can share it. You can do it with someone else, so they can be looking at what you're looking at. You're looking at what they're looking at, and you can circle things with your finger of take a look at this, and this goes up this way. If you have a Vision headset, you need to download that app. It's free.
Jason.
Yeah, this is the most fun I've ever had in a weekend, and it is just brand new. I'd say I've spent, probably maybe 12 hours is about right. It basically every moment that I've had since it came out, just playing around with it. I would love to see a Lego app. I think that would be amazing to be able to turn things around and explode them out. Basically anything that's 3D. Oh, and by the way, there's an incredible application for airports where it'll give you a 3D of the airport. You type in the airport, and it will show you the planes coming in. You just tap the plane.
What's your dream app? What's your dream app that hasn't come out yet?
Oh, man. We'll go with Lego.
Alexander?
Well, one of the things that I don't think this is possible, but maybe the people here that have a Vision Pro can tell me if this is something you could do, because I just remember the early demos that Microsoft had with the Surface, where you could interact with multiple devices and drag things from one device to another would be really cool. So for example, if I had my MacBook Pro in front of me, if I wanted to take a file or say a keynote presentation that was on my MacBook, if I could touch the MacBook screen, drag the file and throw it into the air, something like that would be magical.
Sorry, just building on what you just said there, you could theoretically, someone could write this without any interaction with Blackmagic, where you just touch an input on you have a 3D model of a switcher, you just touch the input and put it in the router. You already have it routed, but you said that I want this to go to here and this to go to here and this to go. You could just touch two things and it would build the routing to do that. Those are the kind of things that you could be, building routing by just grabbing onto the objects.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is here with a question. The CBS Sports press release mentioned studio and game coverage will employ a graphics package designed using Unreal Engine. How do you control Unreal Engine in a live environment?
Courtney?
Well, in the case of the Superbowl, they have lots of encoders on the cameras. And I think the reason they're doing this, how they're going to use the augmented reality is they're simulcasting this on Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon, is famous for all their sliming. And here's an example of how they're going to spread slime onto the audience and use it in a variety of ways of interacting with 3D graphics into the stadium, which they do all the time, of course, with the yard down and the first down line, and et cetera. And so a lot of those cameras are automatically registered in the stadium and set up with Unreal Engine so that they can lay 3D graphics on top and around and in a variety of cameras. So they'll have 25 encoded cameras in the stadium, and maybe they could also use it for the pre-show, where they could put they could have our commentators in a booth with a green screen behind them somewhere behind the stadium out of the way, and then they could place them anywhere they want on, Las Vegas Boulevard or whatever, and do their coverage of the pregame and the postgame and the halftime show, halftime analysis in a 3D engine.
Alex?
Yeah, Ross Voyager is a pretty popular one, and we have some folks here in our group that use it a lot for these kinds of things, and actually work on that team. So that's a pretty popular way to use it. But the reality is the virtual reality of this is that you can control Unreal Engine in many ways because it is a game engine. It just has, give me the inputs and tell me what you want me to do next. So one thing about, you'll see it Unreal and you'll probably wonder why they're not using Unity. And it's because Unreal went through all the trouble to integrate with broadcast. So 2997, 5994, those types of things. Unity won't do that and Unreal will. So that's why it's pretty much the standard and people are building off of it.
Next question.
John Borntrager from Cincinnati, Ohio. Not sure if mentioned here before, but has anyone watched the Netflix doc Greatest Night in Pop? It's an incredible behind the scenes about We Are the World.
Bill?
Yes, I watched it, and yes, I was fascinated. It is really, I think, a singular occurrence in terms of that many gigantic megastars in one room interacting, and you get to kind of be there with them interacting. And it's really interesting to see how they describe and how certain people who have never met each other kind of it looked like they were forming friendships. But there's a lot of stress, too, because they're trying to produce a song overnight. I mean, they assembled right after the Video Music Awards. All these limos showed up very much in secret because nobody wanted to know anybody else to know they were doing it. And just the dynamics between a room with that much star power wattage is really fascinating to watch. You see somebody like Bob Dylan, who is, as iconic as it got back in those eras, literally almost a little nervous to do his part because he was surrounded by probably 30 of the finest performers on the planet. So just the dynamics alone of being able to be taken into a studio like that and that much on the line and stand up and do your job is not easy, even for the top people. It was really interesting.
Mitchell?
Great behind-the-scenes shots of artists and the directors like Quincy Jones and people. It started with Quincy hanging a sign over the door. It's famously there. It says, "Leave your ego at the door." And we did see some egos pop up, but not for the most part. Everybody's pretty good except Waylon Jennings. But everybody else was in pretty good spirits.
Next question.
Next question from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I want to live stream classic arcade games competitors. Is there a way to capture the screen into a streaming software?
For those competitions, Alex?
If you're talking about a traditional one, it could be very, very hard. You probably have to do some pretty custom wiring to get that to come out. If you're talking about a simulator and the potential of tying that back into a simulator, a lot of the simulators will have HDMI outputs. And so you can actually take those. So it depends on what you mean by classic. For competitions, a lot of times they want the originals. And so it may be a hard thing for you to get them willing to do that for an official competition. But if you really want to show it off, a lot of these have been copied bit for bit. And you can actually put them back into enclosures that play it all out. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty darn close. And you have all the same controllers on the top and everything else. And in those cases, you'll be able to take an HDMI out.
Courtney?
There are a number of capture cards that have composite video input, and a lot of those games, of course, had composite video outputs because they were home games. They were designed to play on your TV. So you should be able to find.
I think he's talking about arcade, though. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get the home TV ones out, but I think he's talking like the arcade
classic
games, like the enclosures.
Classic arcade games, which have sometimes they have vertical, and they have vertical video in them. Vertical mounted CRTs that are mounted on their sides, so they're portrait mode. So that'd be pretty tough to get out into the real world. But a lot of them do have internal video outputs that you can actually tap into that video that's feeding the monitor. So you could have a person, an electrician, come in and tap into that video stream and feed it out into an encoder for yourself.
Next question.
Eric Hers from Hartford, Connecticut. How popular is the YouTube 4K Plus add-on package?
Alex?
I'm probably not very popular. Not near. I mean, compared to it, YouTube I think published some numbers recently, and they are. It's a I don't remember what the exact subscription numbers are, but the subscription numbers are massive. For YouTube, for YouTube Live as well as YouTube. I don't know if they're splitting those numbers out, but I doubt that 4K is a big chunk of that because it's an additional cost. But I think that it's overall, I think the YouTube Premium as well as YouTube Live has been a huge success for what they're doing.
Chris?
I'm just curious, what is YouTube 4K plus? Let's just assume somebody doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, I think that it's the I believe he's talking about YouTube TV. So you can pay an additional subscription if you have a 4K TV to get 4K streams when they're available. So some streams are available in 4K. Some of them, there's still some that are only 720p or 1080p. But if a station or a network is delivering a 4K stream, YouTube will send it to you. So it's and if you have the bandwidth and so on and so forth. So it's a small. I believe, but I don't think that it affects YouTube. I don't think it affects YouTube. I think it's YouTube TV's 4K solution.
So
and Alexander?
I'm sorry.
And as someone who uses YouTube TV, Alex, are they just doing these broadcasts as SDR? They're not. I'm assuming they're not doing HDR. That's too complicated for sports.
I don't think that they're doing HDR yet. They are doing 5.1. So so they'll definitely deliver 5. If there's a 5.1 signal, they're delivering. I think that it has to be packaged on the other end as EAC3 like we do. But yeah, it comes out as 5.1. So the surround is being supported. And I will say that especially when you get the network feed, so when you're not getting your local TV feed. So if San Francisco plays here and it's on a local station, you might get a 720 feed because the local station they're pulling it from the local station. If you're getting the network one, which is not local to you, a lot of times the quality is really high. I mean, the YouTube TV has definitely gone from, I don't know if this is going to work, to I feel like the feed from YouTube now is better than the average Comcast feed, like that I used to, see when on cable. There's less compression. It's higher quality, especially in the sports area. And it's pretty amazing.
Next question.
And it's from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. If you watched last night's Grammys, where Joni Mitchell performed for the first time, what was your highlight? And did you watch the commercial that was a superb music video? Too good to be a commercial?
Bill?
There was a lot to like in the Grammys last night. There were some things that didn't connect with me, but boy, that was one moment that really reached me in a deep way. She did what made her a star, both sides now, but she did it in a slower tempo with so much feeling and meaning. And to be able to get on a stage at 80 plus years old, sit there and command the entire room. I love the audience shots where they cut to particularly the young women artists who are coming up and have a chance to be that kind of artist, and to watch them in just rapt attention to what this woman was doing on stage was just a joy. It was one of my favorite moments of the night. There were a lot of other good performances. There's a lot of fast forward through things for me, but I really enjoy the Grammys because it's the one award show where people actually have to get up there and perform. And you could tell there's nothing between you and what they're doing. That same moment with Billie Eilish's solo on her side, when they move in close and you can see an artist who's that good truly making their art in real time, it's an extraordinary circumstance. I loved it.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I only saw one error in the switching, and it happened in the In Memoriam segment. They cut to Jimmy Buffett that was parked in the EVS at the wrong spot, just for like 4 frames, 5 frames, but I did see it. But other than that, I really thought the production was really well, and the audio was really well handled. I thought the mix was excellent.
Next question.
Gary Lind in McKinney. Does anyone know what happened to This Week in Tech last night?
Alex?
No, I don't know what happened. I thought it was going to be obvious. I raised my hand thinking that, I'm sure it was just power outage or something, because a lot of us up here lost power. So I was assuming that it just lost power, but I don't know. I don't see any comments about it. Maybe Courtney knows more.
Courtney?
What was interesting is that the studio and the 2 people that were on Zoom coming in, their audio kept going. The studio went black in the middle. Leo was saying something. It just went black. So we still had the YouTube feed, but everything from the studio was gone except for the two guests that were coming in over Zoom. We still heard their audio go on for several minutes after the studio disappeared. So I thought it was a power failure, but I thought it was interesting that they still had audio up into YouTube.
And we've got a great week ahead here on Office Hours Global. Tomorrow, And since everyone has their Apple Vision Pros, we'll have some of our team and some of the panelists just sharing and talking about their experience. So if you have not, don't know how, but if you have not had a chance to see it, you want to definitely tune into the show. And then on Wednesday, we've got Lewitt Audio. We've got Brian Fisher coming in from Lewitt Audio's channel marketing team. So they're going to just talk to us about just how they create such exceptional educational content. So you want to tune in for that. And then on Thursday, we've got Alton.io, and they'll be just talking to us about how what they've created for the Vision Pro and just how they're supporting spatial audio. So Thursday and then Friday, as we get through the week, physical storage. It's not the pretty side of what we do, but it's definitely necessary to make sure that we're using our storage practically. And of course, Saturday is our Q&A around education. So come with your questions, your production related questions. And then Sunday is introspection. And be sure to submit your questions as we make the transition now. And we are back. Welcome to the second hour here on Office Hours Global. If you have any of your questions around, we're going to get into personas and what they are, go ahead and submit them in Mukana, and then also panel any of your experience in just creating personas, or as some people call them, avatars, which they are when your audience, the audience that you're trying to build, whether that be social, whether that be marketing, really the marketing and sales teams or even product development is where you'll hear a lot of that language, because these are making sure that you have some sort of representation of who you're speaking to or who you're creating the product for, or from the sales perspective, who are you trying to sell to? Who are your customers? And there are a few ways that you can determine that. Most importantly is looking at your analytics. And sometimes it's a matter of, are you starting from scratch? And if you are, that takes a lot of customer discovery, going out and actually speaking to the people that you think are your potential customers and documenting that. Whenever we start a project, say there is a client that comes on and they've hired us to help them with their social media or creating some sort of campaign. The first thing that we do is we get into the analytics. So is pulling from their Google, pulling from like Google Analytics, pulling from their social media insights. And then overall, you're looking at their demographics, the who, what, where, when behind the audience. And that way, if they do not have that, if you do not have that already in place, this is where you get an idea of your audience. And that way you can craft, okay, here we're going to segment people out. And I've actually pulled together some prompts. We'll go into ChatGPT for a minute so that we can just really think about how, even using office hours as an example. So give me one moment as I pull this up so that I can share screen. And the reason that just even understanding your persona and your customer, right now, attention is such a rare commodity online. There's so much noise, and you want to make sure that you're speaking to the right person, because if your customer if you are not creating the kind of content that they need to see or really speaking to them, then you are trying to speak to everyone, and that doesn't lead to making sure that you've got a good connection with your community and with your audience. There's so much conversation around niche, and bear with me as I get this. There we go, screen share. So I'm in ChatGPT 4, and I'm going to pull out a new chat. Now, typically, when you're looking at the data part of putting your persona together, after you've collected all the research, so step one is you want to start with just going into your analytics, whether that is looking at the last 90 days, that's always a good benchmark. from the last 90 days, and then being able to say, okay, what are some of the patterns that we see with our persona? So I've mapped out here, and this is all fabricated data, okay, just as a preface here of just what the office hours community would look like. Now, if I were in ChatGPT here and starting from scratch, I probably would have already primed it with some data from some of the content that we've already created for office hours in the past, looking at the analytics across as many boards as possible. So we have a daily newsletter that goes out. So what are the open rates, or what kind of devices, all of that information. So here, so we've fabricated information here and I'm just going to actually switch this around so that you can see the prompt at the top here, but I'm telling it using the data provided for office hours, dynamic, globally reached online platform catering to enthusiasts and professionals in the film television industry. I'm now going to ask it to take that information, and you're going to create personas around the demographics, their interest patterns, and I want it to be in a table format so that it'll be easy to read. So as this pumps out here, and it's coming through, and you can see I've got my GPT. Yes, it responds, Miss Liberty. And so now here it goes, and we've spit that data out. And this is really useful if you're just starting out and you've not really taken the time to craft an identity to know who you're talking to or who you're marketing to, then this, and just a simple prompt of asking it to create the persona based on the data. And if you don't have hard data, that's okay. You probably already have the data in your mind, speak to other people on your team. And so here we go. It's already put together 3 archetypes. And now, Alex, feel free to jump in. It's like, I know I gave it fake data, but does this really, sound like our community? So it's created 3. And ideally, you want to have roughly 2, possibly 3 personas, because when you're speaking to a customer, there isn't just one type. There are variations of that customer type. So here, as you'll see here, we've got them, and it's labeled, like giving it an identity. And we always, as a best practice, want to make sure that you give it a name so that if you are speaking to the sales team, the comms team, and someone in product, or even in another department, everybody knows that when we say Ethan, that everybody knows who Ethan is. When we say Liam, everybody knows who that is. When we say Noah, then everyone knows who that is. And you can everyone can be on the same page. So as you'll see here, age range, location, interest, engagement patterns, and what are their preferred platforms. And it spits this out here. Now, this is like very simple, but you can get as complex and some of the important parts that you'll want to make sure that you have are like psychographics. What do they like? What are their dislikes? What are their behavioral patterns? And some of those things can come out of your even surveys. So if you're intentionally looking at, okay, we have seen poor conversions on YouTube. Let's take a moment to look back at the last 90 days and then pull and see, well, what kind of content, what kind of watch time, like all of that data will help to then enable you to say, okay, what are some of the changes that you want to make? So here it is. They've given us some sort of a story even around Ethan. I'll just read one of them. So Ethan represents the younger segment of Office Hours audience. He's deeply interested in how the latest technology investments can be applied to filmmaking. Ethan is likely a budding filmmaker or tech enthusiast who seeks to integrate new technologies into his projects. He's engaged with both written content and video reviews to stay ahead of the trends. So as the council or even the backend team, when you have an idea of who you're trying to reach, it's like, so now what else does Ethan need? What else is going to help him to get more Ethans, get all the other Ethans of the world to watch Office Hours? What kind of podcast does Alex need to show up on some other podcast that someone like an Ethan would be a part of? So it's got some of the other ones. I won't go into those 2, but let's have a little fun here and let's have let's have Dolly pull up some visual, because the visual part of it is also equally as important when you're looking at your persona, because, well, what do they look like? What do they wear? What kind of gadgets do they use? So I'll put this prompt here. And now I'm going to tell it from each persona, now capture them visually. So that'll help us to just have an idea of what they look like. Because when you're out in the streets, when we have a team that is going to an event, then you can see people who are like, oh, you know what? They would make a great panelist, or they would make a great, be a part of our back-end team, because a lot of these characteristics and traits really do get into helping us to, at the end of the day, a persona is helping us to focus so that we're not trying to speak to everyone. And we are lasered in on how do we attract them? How do we speak to them? How do we help solve their problem? So waiting for Dolly to get in, and feel free to submit any.
Or did you do it again?
Oh yeah, the first one is an error, but it says it's creating. Why are you processing? I don't know why it's not processing right now. But see, the beautiful thing is that I've already done this before. So let's just go and see. Here are some based on the personas that were. Yeah, right. And interestingly enough, does this not, I changed my window so I can't see if Jason's still here, but this kind of already looks like, on our team or just panel wise. So yeah, so this gives a visual representation of, okay, what do some of these, and this is a previous prompt, so it's not going to necessarily have all of the characteristics that were just mentioned there. But then, this is ChatGPT giving us what this person looks like. Of course, you can go in and make some revisions in here, but just from that perspective, that just helps you again. Oh, okay. Painting a picture so that now we can send this off, because there are some people that are on your team that might be visual. And one of the use cases that I was even thinking through in preparing for this is, while as maybe the vendor that's working for a team, but as just an added value, if they're not seeing event registrations and seeing the conversions there, and you notice that, okay, this is how they're marketing so far. Well, are they really on the right channels for who they say their audience is versus what you are actually seeing in past events working with them? And that's just, one of the ways that by having a clear idea of who and what they need and how to communicate with them, it just helps you to course correct. I want to do one more quick, I'll go back to the previous one to see, oops, sorry. Here we go. And so I'll go back to this one. And this prompt here goes into, so once you've figured out your persona, you figured out where you can find them. Another great way to think about this too is, in addition to them just visiting your platform or visiting your content or attending your event, where do they live, work, and play? I'll say that again. Where does your audience live, work, and play? That information is critical because that will help you to possibly pop up in messaging in a way that's maybe not as sales related, but this helps you to create content that might be more when they're in their personal time. And then you can show up in a non-intrusive way, but this is you building relationship with that archetype, with that persona. So here, I'm going to actually ask it to, and I'm going to make a small tweak here. So I'm going to ask it to, based on the information, okay, so based on the information above, create a customer journey map for Office Hours Global include the stages of awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and advocacy. For each day, provide key touch points and marketing strategies and put this all on the table. So what I'm actually walking through is in a matter of minutes. If you have the data at your fingertips, or if you just mentally know, hey, here are the people that consistently come to our events, or from a client perspective, think of the last, 10 clients that you've had. What are some of the patterns that you find around them? How did you find them? All of that information helps you to develop, here's a profile. That's another way to say it as well. Here's a profile for this person. So then now you know where to show up at, what professional events you want to show up at, because most likely that profile, that person is going to be there and just helping you to get more clients because you've just got that put together. All right. So here it's just built out a template, a table that is going to help with the brainstorming aspect of things of, okay, if I'm trying to get their attention, then, and that's what we call the awareness phase. Once I stop sharing screen, I'll show the sales funnel. I've done the funnel before when answering other questions in the past, but this is why knowing who you're trying to reach and then being able to take them on that, understanding your customer journey, because this is where it's like, okay, here's the kind of content that would be helpful to get in front of them. They say that, I think the number has been bumped up to at least 8 to 11 touch points before someone even is like aware, office hours, like they would have needed to see it that many times before it actually registers, okay, what is that? And just getting people's attention. That's why all of this plays together and just the significance of this. What are some of the questions that they might have? What is Office Hours Global? How can it benefit me in film and, television technology? And then here it's given some strategies, and then again, that time, like how long would it take necessarily for us to get in front of them? I'll actually just showing you this here. I'll stop so that I can go to stop screen share so that I can go to just illustrating this for a second to just walk through what that table is saying, but from the perspective of the funnel aspect. So if I put this around here, so you'll hear people talk about the customer journey or the sales funnel. So at the top of it, I'm just going to really use 3 of them. There are a number of steps to it, but just like that awareness phase to really get, so this is the world, this is the interwebs, this is all the things, and how do we get the right people? How do we even get them to learn about or to be aware of office hours? And that's where that grid gave us some ideas, some blogs, some videos. And then how do we move them down the funnel from them just having an idea about office hours to them actually considering, is this the community? Is this the place for me? Is this where I want to be? And then from them considering, they've probably watched, now that we've got shorts up, they've watched some of our shorts, gotten to actually, we want them to actually like go ahead and hit that subscribe, where like they've made the decision to commit and to be a part of the community. So that is probably the quickest description and just explanation of just creating your persona and making sure that you've got it in a way that you can do all of these things and why that's important and that matters. So Mitchell, go ahead.
I have to say, first of all, Liberty, I'm a total noob to all this stuff. I'm sorry I don't have ChatGPT, but watching you orchestrate that you're like a fine musician playing a piano. It's truly amazing. A couple of questions come up, and I apologize in advance only because I'm not familiar with it. It seems to me that the query you make into ChatGPT determines the quality of the material you get back, or the
definitely
things that it's making. So your ability to query is awesome. It used to take me days, weeks maybe, to generate material to put on my website to create my persona for my company. And now there's something that can do it just pretty much interesting based on the quality of the query that I put into it. Are we getting to a point where we need people to hire an AI to evaluate the results of a query from somebody else, because there's just so much information here?
It is. And actually, just great observation overall that that's the whole idea of prompt engineering. That's where this industry has bubbled up based on AI, all the chat bots that are out there, like your ability to ask great questions based on the data that you gave it. Since I did it, and I should have asked Alex, like, hey, can I get some data to put in this so we could have something more realistic? But having enough data, like I had the website, YouTube, and I think there was one other channel, and putting that information. So yes, quality data in, quality results out, but then yes, the prompting of what you're looking for. The good thing here is that if you're just starting out, this is great because you'll just ask it, okay, just create a customer journey map. But wanting to be more detailed, I need a customer journey, or this persona is for an event that's coming up in 6 months. We need to attract this number. So just the more time you give yourself to think through, what's your end goal, and what kind of information you extract, that always helps you get the best out of APT or any of the chatbots that are out there. Alex?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I don't use personas that much, and I'm fascinated by what you're doing. And as far as thinking about what your target audience is, I will admit that when I do market research, I weight it heavily. The heaviest weight is on what I want to do. I have personas I think about people that might be interested in what we're doing, but I often don't drive my content towards it as much as being aware that it's there. That people might be interested in this, people might be interested in this. I think that the thing that I found early on, probably 20 years ago, was that if I made too much content that I thought the audience would like that I didn't enjoy, that I stopped making it. I would find something else to do because I got bored, and I was like, or I'd feel like a chore. And so pretty much everything I did after the first couple little swings was like things that I'm passionate about. And then the key is using some of the things that you're talking about was less about trying to target a group, but trying to figure out where to market what I love to do. So it reversed it a little bit. So there's a temptation by marketing teams to go, let's build a bunch of personas and let's figure out how to get to them. And we're going to do this thing. And so they want to build their content targeted at a certain audience, which I think, by the way, is very effective at getting lots of viewers. I mean, I think that that's a very effective thing. As a personal thing for me, what I tended to do is reverse that and go, I want to do this. How do I find other people that want to do the thing that I want to do? As opposed, because if I stop doing what I love to do, I will stop doing it. It won't. It just becomes a chore. And there were there's definitely been times when we've done chores because it made money. So it's not like I'm saying that I've definitely done a lot of work that wasn't particularly passionate about, but it paid for the things that I was. And when I'm creating my own content, I usually think about more about my personal interest, just because otherwise I won't have energy to do it. So I think that you can take these personas and kind of go both directions. Does that make sense? Go both directions.
Yeah. And the beautiful part of what you said too is always, whenever I'm sharing about ChatGPT or using AI to help you, at the end of the day, you're still the subject matter expert. So you being, this is what I like to do, and more focused around that from a project or from content, there's still, as you're doing it, that you eventually gain an understanding of the people that are, that are watching or that are engaged with it. So you might, while you do it that way, there's still some form of mentally that you're already thinking of, like identifying with your community. And this conversation too is around understanding and building community. So I would definitely say that you're still in the realm. You're still in the realm, definitely. Mitchell?
I'm still stuck on my query question. Is it possible to feed persona the actual output from somebody else's persona and tell it, give me the query that generated this income or this output, and then see what the query was? I mean, is there a possible way of doing that?
You definitely can. And just to make sure that I understood that correctly, because I'm like, ooh, Mitchell's already hacking. He said he doesn't really get this, but he's already hacking the system. So if I understood you correctly, you're so basically, if there was another office hours type community and then being able to see, like using the data that you maybe know about them to then be able to come up, is that where you're saying it, or just to make sure that I'm clear?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, could I just feed it the output into the input and have it tell me how did this information get developed? Is there a query that I could steal or use accordingly?
Yeah, so you're reverse engineering. So that is, yes, you could take that data and then say, ask ChatGPT or Cloud or Claude or Bing, any of them, and asking them, based on this data, give me a prompt what is the prompt that they most likely used to get to this data or to get to this answer. So that's a way that you could do that. And then from there, I always say best practices, give me 3 variations. Like, these are large language models, so they have a lot more data than we have. So their ability to just synthesize and figure out what goes where and how it got to that result, that would be, yeah, you can definitely do that, and that'd be helpful. So, all right. And I wanted to share too, as much as we're looking at it, marketing and community, if you're involved in community building at all, this is, again, probably doing it and not even realizing that you're doing it, that you've got in your mind that, okay, at said school, these are the kinds of students that are in these programs, or, okay, I need to reach the parents and here are some of the parents' needs. And you already have that mentally there. This is now coming in and making it more streamlined so that if at any point in time you need to hand something off to someone else, you've given them like a clear identity, clear profile for who you're connecting with, you're speaking to. And Alex.
And how do you take the data? So for instance, YouTube gives us a lot of data, and I definitely make decisions about when I think about when we do the show, what we cover, the platforms we cover, a lot of those things, I definitely am paying attention to our data, so I know that, that I think I don't know what the number is right now, but it's well over 70% are on Apple devices. So I know that we can talk about things. I know we can, it's not that we focus heavily on Apple, but I feel comfortable going, well, if I want to talk about the Vision Pro, it's not like I'm talking into a wall of Windows and Android users that just feel left out. I mean, there's some. I'm sorry about that, by the way. If you're watching, we're still excited about it. But I also know that there's enough people that are in our group that are going to be interested in that. That makes it a viable subject.
Yeah. So having that data, using it for brainstorming, using it because the audio you're looking at also. Maybe not you, because the way that you've built the community and you're playing the long game. But for anyone else that might be thinking of, well, I said this a little bit earlier, of like conversion, whatever that is. If your conversion of trying to get more people to watch, if your conversion is trying to get more people to fill out, to respond to your surveys, to open your emails, then by taking that information, you really are looking at, well, what are those where do you see the top results or the top, like you said, Apple. So that most likely if we talk anything Apple, that there's going to be interest or there's going to be people that are responding. That is important because we only have so much time in the day. We only have so many resources. We only have so much bandwidth. So you're looking at, it's like that 80-20 rule, right? So 20% of your I almost mixed it up. 80% of your effort on 20%. There's only really 20% of your audience that is providing 80% of your revenue. And so this is a way that you are making sure that you're just honed in to make sure that you serve them. We talk about that so much on Office Hours, of serving and providing a lot of value. Well, this is one of the ways that you can make sure that you're providing value and that you're really showing up for your audience, for your community. All right. Well, it looks like it's a great time to get into some of the questions here, Mitchell.
Yeah, the questions are piling up here. Paul Wallace from Hot Springs, Arkansas asked, Wondershare Virbo uses advanced AI technology to empower users to create realistic and personalized AI avatar videos effortlessly. Comment in relation to personas.
Alex.
I think the personas are really for you to think about. I don't think it's really trying to build your own persona. I mean, Apple calls it a persona, so it's now gotten very confusing. They've taken that, they've ruined that word now because it's all we're going to think about is the avatars that, because Apple didn't want to use avatars, so they use persona. So I think that it's interesting, and I think that Wondershare, by the way, is doing some pretty incredible things. And so in general, but I don't know if it really relates one-to-one with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so just what I'm reading from this here is the first thing that comes to mind is, well, if I am trying to, when I show up in any of these spaces, that I want to make sure that I am, think of it this way, when you go on a job interview, and I'm going to go back in the day, because lots of the rules have changed, but you, based on how you show up and what you're wearing, there's already going to be some sort of image or perception of who you are. Are you probably a great speaker, whatever those things are based on how you dress? Well, in this case, I'm looking at this like, oh, well, this kind of whatever your avatar is, if you're trying to connect with certain people in this space or in this community, that's the only way that I can see that the connection to us, what we're talking about, personas from this perspective. So hopefully that's helpful, Paul. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, can focus groups and audience research help refine a persona for planning purposes?
Oh, most definitely. Great question, Douglas. This is, and this is why just even the ideas Alex shared before of just the people who you will use personas, you see this much more in the Fortune 5, like larger teams where they need everybody to be on the same page. And so any point in time when you can get research, where you can get data, and I'm also trying to make sure that I balance it from the corporate or the government perspective all the way down to just us being able, as an everyday user, being able to use personas, because the more information and the more data that you have, you're then able to really segment and be able to say, okay, like down to like Amazon, we know this. Amazon and all the big corporations have so much data already. They know what time we're probably going to show up because our last purchase, we've run out of the foundation and it's about time to start serving ads. So yes, it definitely helps around planning and knowing where I shared the who, what, like knowing where your audience or your target audience works, lives, and play, having that information of, well, does it really make sense to have your biggest conference of the year in July in the summer and depending on where you live, but when the kids are out of school, and the stress that it might put on parents if 80% of your audience, they're, parents, or it might help with the decision of, okay, we're going to do it at this fun, family-friendly place because people are our audience, that most of them are on vacation or their kids are on vacation. So now they're most likely. So you're definitely correct there with, can it help with planning purposes? That's why this is done. Alex?
Yeah, one of the more brutal versions of this is eye tracking. Eye tracking allows you to basically either at a display level or at a glasses level watch what people are looking at. So they'll tell you what they like and don't like, but watching them go through an ad, whether it's a video ad or a still ad or a web page or something or marketing materials, when you're talking about modeling what people are doing, what's amazing is how consistent they are. It's really almost a human lower brain thing and very little variance, but you get to see what's effective and what's not effective very quickly. And it's just really humbling and brutal to do it. But I would highly recommend it as you start going down marketing materials, because it definitely tells you a lot about. We used to Colin Johnson, who's part of our organization, he had an eye tracking company, and they would show things where they'd put something in the middle of a web page and you wouldn't see it. Like you just wouldn't, they'd ask you, well, what about this? And you never saw it, because they knew from all the eye tracking that the way you were going to look at it, you're never going to look at that part of the web page. And that was like a really hard thing, because people just think of the web page as the web page, and people are going to look at everything on the web page, but it's not how it works. And if you move this over here, suddenly everyone looks at it. So you're looking at flows of how by moving a box over here, it'll change the flow of how people look at it. And it's really, really powerful.
And I just wanted to pull in, because I was screen sharing and all the things, that just some of the comments that were coming in from the community. So Ken said he wanted to share a brief but important note regarding the default settings of ChatGPT. It has come to my attention that the default ChatGPT version is set to Turbo. For those seeking a more robust experience, I recommend selecting the ChatGPT Classic version, which offers enhanced capabilities. The adjustment may significantly improve your usage of the platform. John says, same technique of using personas is critical to software deployment and live events. Understanding and showing problems from that perspective of the user or attendee. So yeah, and that whole understanding the needs of whoever you're engaging with, it just makes you that much more, they feel connected because you understand them. There's this quote that I remember when Oprah had closed out her 25 years, and she had shared that over that time of doing the show, that she learned that most people, all they want is to be seen, heard, and understood. And I'm paraphrasing that, but that's the same thing. When someone has a decision to make, whether they go with this super expensive XYZ versus this, then some other factors come into play of the customer. We pay for customer experience, those elements. So just understanding who you're speaking to definitely helps in that regard. Next question.
Roscoe Jones, Madison, Indiana. Buyer personas, a.k.a. marketing personas or customer personas, are effective tools to achieve customer centricity. How do you leverage this customer centricity into an active customer and higher sales?
Great question, Roscoe. That goes back to the funnel. So understanding that once you've got an idea of who your personas are, who you're speaking to, then you know you have a better idea. Let's say that you have a better idea of how to reach them and how to speak to them. So if you have, say, a client or you're trying to reach a prospective client that is on the higher end, you're probably not just doing social media posts. You probably you're creating white papers. You're doing actual research and then publishing that research, whether you're commissioning someone to help you with that. But you then understand what are their needs. How do they process information? You are helping them. Alex tells a lot of stories where he'll share his own way of just providing value. So he'll share tips or he'll share resources on one-on-one. So that may be understanding how to speak to them and what their needs are. So understanding that helps you then create a more curated experience. They might be more high touch, because their time and their energy and their overall need for information or the problem that you're trying to solve for them from a marketing perspective. Alex?
Yeah, and I think that the other thing to always keep in mind is you want to be customer centric, but not customer limited. Your customers will constantly want a faster horse, and you may need to sell them on the car, and it may take a long time to sell them on that car or on another vehicle to get there. And so you just need to know that you often need to move them from one place to another as well, because it will be better for them. You're not doing it because of you. You're trying to move. If you do it for you, you're going to it's going to blow back eventually. If you're moving it so that it better serves what they need, and as you get to know them better and customize your solutions better, you're going to be able to kind of see from what you know is possible, moving them from where they are to where they could get a higher return is also part of what you provide to a customer.
Yeah, and then also taking it from even, say, the startup. I liken a small business and startup, kind of putting them in similar areas or similar ways, is asking questions, doing surveys. If you're sending out emails, getting information that, whether that be asking open-ended questions, asking them about their experience, and then taking that data and then being able to synthesize it, because this is not a one and done type of project. This is that you are consistently asking and tweaking and revising. So once you put it together, it's like an experiment. So you've got this hypothesis of this is who we're connecting with, who we're serving, and then all those tests, whether it be the content, the lists, actually taking time to speak to people. I remember just some of the programs that I've been in the past from a startup perspective, where it's called customer discovery. So if you think of your personas as like you're always making sure, are we on the right page? Has anything changed? The pandemic changed a lot for people, so it's not just this standstill model. What in their behaviors or mentally where they are, psychographics, how has that impacted how they need to be communicated with? Next question.
And it's from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. Are there any ways to scrape demographic data to include in defining your persona, especially for local businesses?
Oh, yeah. Like scraping social comments that just going into the comments, being in chat groups and being able to see what kind of questions on YouTube, scraping the questions that are normally asked. Those are just some of like those small hacks that you're now collecting, especially if okay, this is the type of audience, or something like they call them like mirror audiences, that then you can, if you don't necessarily have the budget for yourself to be running ads so that you can really test what converts, then you can go borrow. That's why Facebook is still here, Instagram, because of all the data that they have, that you can leverage similar audiences to then help you then build out your plan or build out your strategy and then test from there. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, will a persona demonstrate a buyer's feelings about your product or service?
The information that you gather in trying to speak to the persona will provide you with the information that you need about their feelings. So again, going back to the idea of surveying and even polls, even if it is, say, using Instagram polls, you'll notice from some of your favorite brands or even people that you follow, polls on the outside, yes, it's engagement, but you're actually getting data to see what, it was the this or that polls, that information, pulling that in, that enables you to get an idea of what people are feeling. And of course, again, just going out and just asking them, because if you have, and I know that earlier John had said in the chat of it helps with even product. And if you're developing a product, you're going to want to survey and ask as many questions as possible so that you can find out if you're on the right track. I always say that having it on paper is one thing, but it's only theory until you actually execute. So this persona is only an idea until you actually test, well, then, hey, for the next month, let's put out this kind of content, or let's do these types of polls, and then gathering the responses there, because that's going to tell you and help you in the process. Next question.
Gordon Lake from Los Angeles, California. Does it make sense to hire a query expert to do the queries? And if so, where do you find these experts?
Oh, so Great question. I think about people who are in the UX space, user experience, because they're great at asking questions. They're great at survey research. I have a couple of friends and associates who are like in qualitative research. So then they are literally doing these survey sessions where, and the name is slipping me right now, of where you test groups. There we go, and getting test groups so that you're able to then get the solutions that you're looking for, the responses that you're looking for from a data perspective. So your local school, professional organizations, especially anything around statistics, those are just some of the people that will be able to help.
Alton Christensen from New York, New York. Is there a way to give an AI a link to my YouTube analytics and ask it questions or to what we're discussing here?
I'm going to say it depends, because I've done that in the past, and I'm trying to remember because at some point in time, ChatGPT had changed your ability to read links. So I don't remember, because I've stopped doing that. What we do is we'll pull the transcript, or we'll pull the data from that perspective to then put it in, and then build it out from there. So that's another hack. So I say it just depends. Go ahead and try it out, because I just don't recall if it is able to do that. But a workaround for that is potentially getting a link to, I don't know if you're putting blogs out, and then also what kind of, to get your YouTube analytics and ask it questions. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. So I'm gonna change my response here. So no, to get your analytics, you'll want to copy and paste that information and just put that in. Or you can test this one out, because it's been a while since I tried it, doing the screenshot of your analytics and then putting it in to read that information. So the second one is test. The first response was no. Next question.
Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana. Is a persona only to increase immediate sales, or is there a longer-term PR goal that might be the purpose of defining your perfect persona?
Oh, really? I would say that it depends on the person, the person's end goal. Yes, I've used Office Hours a couple times just as an example of right now. Alex is in product development and has been refining the product, and whoever comes as they may, but he's got a pretty good idea of the kinds of people that this community attracts, the types of people that may be interested in being on the back end team or being on the panel. And then he's gathering all of this information, now being able to actually vet it against Discord, against YouTube, to then now be able to, as he says, when he's about to turn the knob up, he's already got an idea of who they are. And then if he would like, then here, team, we're looking at trying to reach and speak to these folks, and then be able to build on from there. So I would say that it can go both ways. It really is depending on who the actual, who's running the project, but it does not hurt to have an idea of who you're speaking to, just if, when, where, at all times, so that you're just on point and focused. Alex?
And I would say that I focus more on who I'd like to see as opposed to who's there or who might be there. So, like when we think about reversing that again, I'm trying to build something that's attracting a certain kind of person, and a certain kind of thing. And I'm not looking at who they are as much as who I'm hoping will show up, because I believe that in general, there is a large number of people that want something different globally all the time. There's a woman who has 2.3 million followers watching her do icing. Like just icing, and so she just, and so I think that it's just a matter of promoting what you are passionate about to as many people as possible. And I think that these personas make it easier for you to think about those, of how do you get to them. So I think more about the avenues to get to them and less about, trying to model it towards them, if that makes sense.
It does. And, even while you may think of it like from the other perspective, but that's still having an idea of, well, okay, you know who this person is. Now there's a bit of like, okay, we won't do that based on the fact that we already have these people or we already know how to speak to them. Now let's try and test some other things to see what will and won't work, and then who's attracted to them. I think Gary Vee's one of them. I've been saying this, like a lot of what we're focused on now is attraction marketing. So attracting, and to your point, versus okay, we've already got this. What are the things that we're doing that are organically getting this new audience, or getting someone different to come to the table? So. And then I saw two in the chat. So John is saying that there is also value in understanding who your customers are so that you can provide service that will keep the customers as far as the initial purchase. So yes, that's actually a great point there, because when I did show let's bring this back for a second here, of the funnel. So we said, again, the awareness, the consideration, the decision, but down here is retention. And so I didn't, because of the nature of the conversation, I was like, we're not going to focus on retention, but thanks, John, since you brought that up. So yes, understanding now, how do you keep them? Because the saying goes that it's easier to sell to serve who's already there versus the cost of trying to get new customers. So then that bottom part is retention, or they'll say loyal, and then understanding who they are and what they need, so that you then are being able to provide the best service, product development tools, how you need to speak to them so that they stay, and so that you can limit churn, which is the turnover from just that. Another tool that I wanted to touch on briefly, we did a of years ago, the Celebration Bowl, which is in the HBCU, historically Black colleges and universities. This is like their during the holidays, December. It's the big bowl where you've got the teams from the different regions, from the different divisions coming together, and then just doing social. And we're working with an agency, and we constructed the social that would go out in addition to their proficiency was the advertising side. So the ad spend that went with that, and then the influencer marketing side of things. There's this platform called Keyhole, by far one of the strongest ones at that time. They're still there, but you also need a really good budget for using that. But it was pulling in all of that data, all of that information that we could in real time see and understand what was working, and then understand again, as I've shared before, it's like you have an idea of who audience-wise and what they look like for those conversions, but then we were able to see what was hitting and what wasn't, so that we could quickly, oh no, we needed to do more videos. We found out that whenever there was an influencer on camera, that provided better results than when we were just talking about the teams, which, that kind of makes sense if you look at it just thinking about that. But yeah, that those tools help you to make those quick decisions in real time. So if it's time sensitive in that matter. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, are personas something used to guide building a test audience for real-life testing?
Oh, yes, most definitely. So real life testing, so that you're creating this idea of who we potentially think. So if you are, let's use an existing company, or even an existing event. So if we have NAB coming up and they are maybe wanting to try out virtual and what a remote audience, people buying tickets, to what that experience could look like. Well, they might look back on data that might show just on how many people are consuming their content. I know that they have done in the past also having some remote hosts. So they start building out that content on YouTube, and then these remote hosts are now walking around the building. And so by building that out, they could look at, oh, okay, so if we actually had some more virtual options, what could that look like and who could that be, and develop a persona there based on legacy data that they already have. So yes, Douglas, people definitely build persona so that they can test things before a major release or a major addition to whatever their product line is. Great question. Next question.
Roscoe Jones, Madison, Indiana. Do you trust the statistic that 81% of customers are willing to pay a premium for personalized service? And how would a perfect persona help a business collect this premium?
So I test. I don't trust, I test. So I would definitely.
I think that's what trust but verify.
There we go. Trust but verify. Vet everything. So just using this as a real-time use case. So the answer is no, I wouldn't necessarily trust that, but I would verify that whatever data I have at hand, and I would start looking at if we had any access to maybe purchasing patterns, or let's use this again as some kind of event, looking at how many people bought the VIP package. And then from there, what do we have any survey information, and being able to take that information, what can we look at? Were there a good place to look at on surveys is like, what problems, what didn't people like? And now, can we then solve that for this premium group so that we can then, and I feel like I should have like drew that out, but like if at the last event there was this person, and then based on the survey data that we found out that a lot of people had a hassle with parking, and that was their biggest issue. And these were the people who spent $1,000 on the event versus the ones that maybe spent like $300. Anyone who spends money, they're all valuable. Just putting that out there. But those that spend $1,000, okay, well, we want to potentially create a platinum experience, a platinum VIP. Please forgive the acronyms right now, but a platinum VIP experience. And we want that to be $1,500. So now we're looking at, well, did they have that we could solve? Well, if parking was an issue, if they complained about or they had an issue with the internet service, can we create a lounge experience for them? And then now have that at that $1,500. And then in advance, before putting out those sales, having a survey we're thinking about, we want to develop this for you, and then asking them those questions. So those are just some of the ways that I would think of being able to provide a more premium or a more high touch experience to then bring that up. So hopefully that helps, Roscoe. Alex?
Complaints are oftentimes a market opportunity.
Very much.
It's like when someone's complaining about something, they're telling you what you haven't provided that you could provide that they would be willing to pay more for, and probably not only them.
Yeah, and tying a bow on this as we're winding down is like, okay, who else? There might be people who have not voiced anything. You don't necessarily have data, but are there patterns in that, whoever you're thinking about for this VIP experience, are there patterns that you see potentially? Because there are lag indicators, and then there are those that are, okay, this is something that they're predictive that we can, and that's where that in the marketing space, being able to be forward thinking in your solutions, in your marketing, based on these personas, and just having that data ahead of you in advance. So, that was a lot. lots of information, lots of insights, and I'm really excited to see how, especially since now that there's more shorts happening, to see, because there's so much data that comes in on the backside, and to be able to predict. I look at it like you're playing a game, right? Of, well, let's try this, and what kind of results did we get?
We're really excited. We're going to post some more shorts today, and and I've been fascinated by some that just take off, and then other ones that are like, no. So we've had a couple that have gone well over 2,000 in hours, just of views, and then other ones that are like 56, and you just and so then you go back and look at what the why. And so you're going to see us, to your point, we're going to triangulate what people like based on just what they're watching and what they're liking. And we highly recommend going and check those out and to vote up the ones you like and let us know, because that's going to help us figure out what we select out of each one of these shows to put up. Liberty, by the way, just before you get to the end, just really great job. Just really, really, I didn't really understand how this was going to work, and it filled up a great hour of just some really interesting conversation. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the questions in the chat. Is just like been going off. So, I'd be interested to see also how people, even though we've been speaking this from a marketing perspective, this is also us, like how we show up in rooms, and just thinking if I'm always, these kind of people always talk to me or gravitate to me, what is it that I'm, putting out, and how am I showing up? And okay, let me try going to different events, or let me try something different. That's it. At the end, that's it. That's what we see with personas. So I just want to say thank you to all of the producers for your great information, your great questions and your feedback, and to our panelists for your insights and sharing all of your stories. Next Monday is probably going to be great after the Super Bowl. A lot of great conversation, and of course to our back end team, without which this show would not be possible. And just looking at the Taluk traversal, we have traveled 44,050 miles. That's 70,892 kilometers. That's more than 348 million bananas for scale, all here on Office Hours. And now if you're looking to find out what else is happening for the rest of the week, all you've got to do is head over to officehours.global. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question today, that's okay. AskOfficeHours.global is open 24/7, and you can submit your questions there. And now it's a great time to head into After Hours or go hang out on the Vision Pro. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Or both.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That too.
Yeah.
Liberty, I was really impressed with your typing skills.
Crushed it.
Oh, thank you.
When you were typing live, I was like, wow, look at that.
I really was trying to make sure that I put all that in my notes before, so that I would not have to type. I really wish that last dolly. I was like, what's happening with ChatGPT right now? That last dolly. Jason, I don't know if you were here, but you have a doppelganger on.
I saw that.
They scraped your image, Jason.
Right.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, you got to sue him for copyright now. Copyright infringement.
Right.
Likeness
right.
infringement. Yeah, exactly.
Landmark case.
Great work, Liberty.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Superb. Bye-bye.